Good afternoon. Good. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope we're all doing great today. No? Well, this is how I know that a lot of you have not been to a session that I've moderated. Good afternoon, everyone. Perfect. Now, we're getting there. We're getting there. All right. No, thank you very much for taking your time out to be with us today. Today's event, Accelerating Progress on National Adaptation Planning, Leveraging the NAP Process for NDC Enhancement. This event is co-hosted by the Government of Liberia, UNDP, and the NAP Global Network. My name is Orville Gray, and I'm the head of the Secretariat for the NAP Global Network. To get us started, I'm going to pass to my good friend, Rohini Kali, Senior Technical Advisor, Adaptation Policy and Planning at the UNDP. Rohini?
Thank you, Orville. A very warm welcome to everyone. We know it's a very, very busy time outside the negotiating rooms. So very, very happy to have you here. I'd like to thank Government of Liberia and the NAP Global Network for really, for coming together on this event, because the NAPs are very, very important to all of us. And we know the nationally determined contributions, the 3.0, is critical for all the countries. And at the center of it, we all want adaptation to be supported and to be scaled up. And both the instruments need to be used to really, for countries to be able to scale up their adaptation response. And that's why we think this is a very important topic to really come together. Maybe just a few slides to just frame that relationship between NAPs and NDCs. Or you could say it's really about adaptation planning through both the instruments. So that's what we call, this linkage. So I think this figure is known to people. It is part of the LDC expert group report, which has been tracking the number of national adaptation plans that have been submitted. It's been a long decade, and actually it's been a slow decade, but we are now at the point where national adaptation plans are being developed by countries all over the world, including least developed countries, developing countries, and developed countries. So everybody is engaged in the business of national adaptation plans, and it's obviously very, very important, even though we know that it's quite a struggle to get them done. And what we find in these national adaptation plans is that there are lots of climate-sensitive sectors which are represented. These sectors are growing in number, but some of the more represented sectors are health and agriculture and water, which we did expect that they would be in the NAPs, but more and more there's a focus on biodiversity, which is not always a sector, but sometimes it's treated as a thematic area, sometimes as a sector. There's a focus on ecosystems in many of them, as they should be. And there are all the agriculture subsectors, fisheries, aquaculture, forestry. And then there are increasingly, in the earlier NAPs didn't have a lot about industry or energy or cities or infrastructure. But as they are progressing, we notice that there is much more coverage of different sectors in these NAPs. So quite a lot of work is being done in countries to develop these priorities in these sectors. And these are contained either in a printed, published, submitted NAP document, or it's actually a kind of it could be a study that or a plan that is being validated by government, because we don't actually know the actual number of NAPs because so many countries are working on them. And then in some cases, they've started the process in some form or the other. And when they start the process, it means they're discussing it really across the whole of government. Of course, we would like it to be whole of society, but it's a huge challenge for the ministries to also come together on this. So now I think So NAPs are more than 10 years old in terms of the decision. It came in before the Paris Agreement in Cancun. But then ever since we had the landmark Paris Agreement, we know that the nationally determined contributions are actually the vehicle for countries. And I think they may have started out as instruments for mitigation, and of course they remain as an instrument for mitigation targets, but there's a pretty strong coverage of adaptation in the NDCs because in a way the NDC is one of the highest, sort of political documents of a country. So there's quite a bit of adaptation in the NDCs now, and I think we have some numbers here. Let me just look. I think it's a majority of NDCs in the last round have adaptation in them. Yes, that's the one which is, the 2020, 2021. And also, just in terms of the cycle, the NDCs are prepared over 5-year cycle. At the same time, there is the adaptation plans which are moving, as we said, not at the same scale as the NDCs, but they contain the detailed priorities and the action plans at a slightly more granular level. We know that, as I mentioned, we have 60 developing countries submitted, but many more working. They also have different time frames. It's considered medium to long term. We've written here 5 to 10 years. Some of them are slightly longer in nature. And also, while the NDCs have a clear kind of updating cycle, with the GST decision at the last COP, there is a deadline also for all countries to submit NAPs by 2025. Now, it remains to be seen whether that will really be met. We are really, I think everyone is pushing to get more and more NAPs submitted. But whether they will be at the same scale of all countries that have submitted NDCs, I think remains to be seen. So I'd like to actually speak just to mention that UNDPs and the UN system has got together to really support countries on the NDC 3.0. This initiative is called the Climate Promise 2025, and it's the largest offer of support on NDCs to date. And in the last round of the NDCs, a large majority of developing countries were supported on this NDC update. And this time around, the entire UN system is mobilizing to really support the countries, and very much in collaboration with the NDC partnership. I'm sorry, I'm not able to see my own slides, so that's why I'm just kind of moving ahead a little bit. Yeah. So there is a very large mobilization effort. So now I want to speak about how can what has already happened in the adaptation planning process, how can it actually, it's really meant to help countries implement adaptation action. But there is actually a lot of work done in the NAPs which can help countries to even revise the NDC, because this is work that is already done and it can be really placed in the NDC for coherence, for making sure that these are kind of like really reaching like at the highest political level. And it means that there is work done that doesn't, it's a great foundation. It doesn't mean countries need to repeat their efforts, on some of these issues. And I just want to give a few examples of what are countries doing and how it's relevant to the NDC. Okay, sorry to be slightly awkward. I just want to make sure that I'm explaining the examples properly. So for example, yeah, I think I just need this one to work. Yeah, okay. So you can see there's a spread from all over the world. There are, for example, in Bangladesh, there is a detailed, risk assessments that have been done in priority sectors. There is, a series of prioritized actions and a costing that is done for interventions. And that has a lot of implication for the NDC, because there are actions, sectors already prioritized by the government, which can be, it actually means quite a bit of those can be signaled in the NDC. Then we're very lucky to have our country partners here. We have Liberia, we have government of Moldova, Lebanon. So you have your own experiences on this, but there are these examples where also for let me just go there. Yeah, so like Azerbaijan, for example, our host country, has done vulnerability assessments in the most vulnerable districts, with assessments and projections in the agriculture sector. So that's actually very, very useful for looking at what are some of the bottom-up priorities which might come from there. And I think similarly, there's quite a bit of work done in Moldova on adaptation metrics, other topics. We can hear a bit more from Dr. Aliona when she's on the panel. So you can see that there is actually quite a bit of information, detailed studies that are done in these NAPs, which can be really used to help the NDC to really move forward. And it's both on, it's on risks and vulnerabilities, on frameworks, on metrics, on finance, social inclusion, capacity building. And as part of this Climate Promise 3.0, there are also more technical resources and tools which are actually put together in this NDC 3.0 Navigator. This is an online resource where countries can have a look at what kind of information or what kind of tool can be used to really communicate adaptation priorities within the NDC, to provide momentum, and to also improve the section of the NDC which relates to adaptation. Because many countries have done quite a bit of work under their NAPs, but how should it be prioritized, packaged, simplified, make it easier to actually put it into the NDC? And also, if there are these strong linkages between the NAP and NDC, it can actually reduce the reporting burden for countries, because now there are so many different instruments that exist. So I think maybe what I will say here is that if I were just to give maybe a few kind of some key messages here. So what is the relationship? I mean, the relationship between the two has to be according to a country context. Every country may have a different relationship on this matter, but NDCs do lay out the commitment and the vision. But to really drill down into adaptation priorities, it's actually the adaptation plans which do that. There are actually more details or structures. There's an action plan. I think I said quite a bit about the substantive inputs to the NDC updates, such as risk and vulnerability assessments are already done, strengthening legal regulatory frameworks, strengthening capacity. Also, there is, I think, if there is a coherent policy structure between the two, it might support resource mobilization, because there is a chronic deficit in resources for adaptation. And I think even institutionally, if they are not parallel processes, it might support to bring the efforts together. And I think we can expect NDC 3.0 to have, again, quite a bit of adaptation, and hopefully this time around it will be easier for countries. And in some cases, some countries did a national adaptation plan, after their NDC. So Bhutan, for example, did a nationally determined contribution where they mentioned the adaptation section, but they said that our adaptation section will be much more detailed in the adaptation plan. So basically, we are very concerned about adaptation. These are our key priorities, but they will be, and they actually formally mentioned in the NDC that we are developing a national adaptation plan, and that is going to be our major adaptation vehicle. And the same with the Papua New Guinea. They actually, before they did their NAP, they put some targets inside their NDCs. These are quantitative targets. How many, I don't remember the exact targets, but they were really numbers. And they mentioned those, but when they developed their NAP, they actually have elaborated on what they want to do to achieve those targets. So there is a two-way relationship between the two. So I think maybe with those main, points, I am really looking forward to having this interaction with all our country representatives. And I think I'm going to hand over to Orville to maybe take us to the next round here.
Thanks so much, Rohini. And I'm just going to step in for Orville, who had to step away for a moment. My name is Christian Ledwell. I'm a member of the NAP Global Network Secretariat. Just to say that we fully endorse and agree with Rohini and UNDP that NAPs and NDCs can work together to accelerate adaptation action. From our work as the NAP Global Network Secretariat, we've seen that NDCs can often articulate the higher level vision and goals for adaptation, while NAPs can be the vehicles for implementation. The NDCs can be the what, and NAPs can often be the how. And so we have a really exciting panel of speakers that we'll be joined by today. So first of all, we have Arthur R.M. Becker, a climate change expert with the Environmental Protection Agency of Liberia. We have Dr. Aliona Rusnak, Secretary of State in the Ministry of Environment, Republic of Moldova. We have Gertie Pierre, who is Director in Haiti's Climate Change Department. And we have Leah Kai, who is with UNDP and the Ministry of Environment from Lebanon. So my first question is for Arthur. Arthur, can you please tell us what you see as the most important milestone that Liberia has achieved on the transition from planning to implementation of adaptation since the 2021 launch of Liberia's National Adaptation Plan? Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much to the NAP Global Network. And it's a pleasure joining the network as a country to organize this side event. We are also glad for the support that the NAP Global Network and other partners have continued to give Liberia. We officially launched our national adaptation plans in 2021 and did submit that instrument to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. It is a 10-year document running between 2020 to 2030. And is a full commitment to address the impacts of climate change. But there are particularly very important milestones as a country that we've been able to achieve. In 2023, Liberia was able to successfully establish a multi-stakeholder platform, which brings together relevant government agencies, ministries in Liberia, including the private sector and civil society, and not leaving out the young people who form a vast majority of the population in Liberia. And that platform is geared towards enhancing collaboration to be able to drive NAP implementation at the national level. We've also, at the national level, been able to endeavor to carry out a lot of capacity building initiatives aimed at equipping local communities and government officials, because in all of this, policy buy-in is quite important and quite key. What is also important is the integration of rolling out the national adaptation plans into national policies. We had the Agenda for Transformation, a 5-year national development agenda that inculcated adaptation interventions to a large extent. 5 years after, we also had the Propo Agenda for Prosperity and Development, which also articulated clearly how the government would endeavor to accelerate adaptation interventions at the national level. Currently, we have the Arrest Agenda for Inclusive Development, which also primarily looks at how do we drive environment and natural resource governance issues, which the National Adaptation Plans is quite crucial about. We've also been able, as a country, to develop our first adaptation communication, which is quite vital. Through the support of the NAP Global Network, we're able to do that. We were also able in 2022 to develop a monitoring, evaluation, and learning framework, which enables the country to be able to monitor, evaluate, and carry out learning exchanges around the national adaptation plans. Just last year, we were able to conclude the development of our communication strategy for national adaptation. And not only developing a strategy, but the strategy is also aligned with an implementation plan. So we are currently working with relevant stakeholders to ensure that we can be able to roll out the implementation of our communication strategy. We were able, most importantly, to organize a civil society, youth, and private sector dialogue in July of this year that brought together a cross-section of civil society actors, young people, including the private sector, to be able to drive cohesive synergy on how these primary sectors can be able to drive the implementation of our national adaptation plan. And just in August of this year, to lift at the policy level, we were able to bring together members of the National Parliament in Liberia, ministers of sectorial line ministries and agencies, to be able to ensure that we have a full commitment at the highest level in terms of driving the national implementation, national adaptation plans for Liberia. That dialogue ended with the adoption of what we refer to as the Farmington Dialogue, high-level commitment towards the implementation of national adaptation. So there's a lot going on in country. We also have several projects geared towards adaptation interventions. Most of them coastal related. A few of them are agriculture related. We have the Monrovia Metropolitan Climate Resilient Project, geared towards ensuring that we protect the coastal area. There's a particular area in Monrovia and its environs referred to as West Point. Also in the southeastern part of Liberia, through the Global Environment Facility, there's an intervention to also salvage the city of Greenville from coastal erosion, including the current ongoing project that has to do with strengthening agricultural resilience through transformational livelihood. Just in the next few weeks, we'll also be organizing as a country with the support of the NAP Global Network, the gender and social inclusion training, bringing together a cross-section of gender experts from line ministries and agencies to train them in how can they use the dynamics, the techniques and methodologies around gender and social inclusion to be able to drive national adaptation in Liberia. Because of time, we end thus far, but we have a lot that we are doing in Liberia, but not in isolation, but with support of our development partners. And we are also grateful to the National Adaptation Global Network for their support as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'll now pass back to Orville Gray to moderate the rest of the section.
Thank you, Christian. All right, so we'll now ask Dr. Aliona Rusnak, Secretary of State, Ministry of Environment, Republic of Moldova. So a question for you. Earlier this year, the Republic of Moldova adopted a climate actions law and communicated its NAP to the UNFCCC. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Can you please share with us how the policy framework for climate change adaptation is coordinated?
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting Republic of Moldova. Thank you for the government of Liberia for organizing such a great event and joining together, beautiful minds and sharing experience. This is really important. I'd like to thank you so much for the UNDP, because UNDP is the parent of NAP in Moldova. This is how I call it, because grant to UNDP and GCF fund, we were able to submit and to draft our first NAP, National Adaptation and Climate Change Program, was back in September 23. After that, in April 24, we adopted the umbrella, the law that actually it's umbrella for the whole climate environment in the Republic of Moldova, and this is Law on Climate Actions. The Law on Climate Actions, it's kind of an umbrella, the law that sets all the main principles and the strategies that Republic of Moldova will follow. Well, it has the notion of adaptation, it has the functions of each minister, it has the functions of the local public authorities. So taking this into account, we have a really good structure and really good steps that need to be taken into account. Even though the law has an 18 months period to enter into force, because it's a really, really complex law that needs to be adjusted all the bylaws. So in this way, it will enter in force next year in 2025, November. But nevertheless, up until then, we have a lot to work on. And this is what we will do. In terms of the adaptation, you know, we have at the national level, this is Law on Climate Action. This is National Program for Adaptation and Climate Change, so-called briefly PNASC, as we call it. It's up until 2030. It is intersectorial because it has 6 sectors, you know, that are focused on. In the same time, we have a National Committee for Climate Change formed under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister, and it is composed of the main ministers, which is Minister of Environment, which is the Deputy Chairman, Minister of Energy, Agriculture, Infrastructure, Health, Education. So there are around 9 ministers that play a key sector role in different domains, and adaptation is one of it. Moreover, we have the National Adaptation Program. We are still supported by UNDP, and thank you for that. We are supported by NDC partnership in our NDC, so our developed partners are staying hand to hand and working closely and really sure that we are getting there. And I would like to say that in this way, by 26, the UNDP and GIZ will support us to draft the local plans, all the local public authorities on adaptation, so-called PASEC, yeah? So what does it mean? We take it from the above, yeah? Internationally, it was submitted to the UNTCCC. Thank you so much for the you know, citing us. This is really important for us, a small country but has big ambitions. And that's why, you know, we're taking at the national level and local level. So what does it mean? We have kind of get together everything. And of course, with the monitoring and evaluation, I will just cite that there are several indicators that we're citing, and it's at the macro level, meso level, and micro level, yeah? So we're taking the indicators at the macro level: vulnerability reduced, adaptive capacity enhancement, meso level, which is sectorial water, health, and of course, at micro level, we have subsectorials. But if you have more questions on this, you know, we'll get it, and I don't want to keep, and I really want to hear my other panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Resnat. We'll now invite response from our colleague Gertie Pierre, Climate Change Department of Haiti. And Gertie, for you, we have a wonderful question for you. Last year, Haiti has secured USD $31.3 million in financing from the GCF for the project titled Enhancing Climate Resilience in the Trois-Rivières region of Haiti through Integrated Flood Management. How does this project implement Haiti's national adaptation priorities? And what advice would you have for peers from other countries working on preparing adaptation proposals to implement priorities from their NAP and NDC?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share experience of Haiti and elaborating this project. So I would like to thank also UNDP for this project, because this project is implemented on the UNDP as a accredited entities. So this project was elaborated, we didn't even have our NAP. This project was elaborated, taking into account the implementation of the first NDC of Haiti. So, because in the NDC, as you know, we had to identify some option on adaptation and mitigation. So, with these priorities that we identify, so the country has learned to elaborate the first big project and then to submit to the GCF. So that until 2017, we have elaborated this project, and then in 2023, right, it was approved under a GTF project. So it was very important for us because the big thing of this project is that we didn't even wait for the NAP to elaborate the project. So that's one of key of that. So even though you don't have our NAP yet elaborate, so you can try to elaborate project on adaptation or even though cost-cutting project or adaptation or mitigation. To elaborate this project, we take into account our first NDCs, some priority that option we identify in the NDC. So what can I advise? The advice that for the other country is we have to be closely monitored this project because they allow you to identify the gaps and challenges that we can encounter in the future on the NAP or in the NDC. And also, because the good point is that the component of this project, that the project of Thriver, it was one of key priorities of already identifying the NAP and already identifying the NDC and also repeat in the NAP. So it's to see the island line that our NAP have with the NDC. So we have to also, the one of component of the project, it was strengthening of infrastructure protection against flooding and soil conservation in order to protect of weather in Haiti. So that's one, when we made some our NAP process in Haiti, doing consultation and regional consultation, it was 4 regions that already identified the same project that we already elaborate with the UNDP. So it was a very, very important for us elaborating this project. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jyoti. All right. And now we have, last but definitely not least, we have Ms. Leah Kai, UNDP representative in Ministry of Environment in Lebanon. So my question to you, Leah, in the current crisis context, how are you ensuring the prioritization of climate change adaptation planning for the country? And what lessons have you learned during this process?
Thank you, Orville. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for organizing this session and for providing us with the opportunity to share the unique, but not very unique, unfortunately, challenges that we are facing. I think there are some countries that are facing same challenges, that are in conflict temporarily or permanently. And you have to move forward and continue with your climate change planning. So just to give you a context, the crisis in Lebanon started in 2019 with an economic crisis, big blast, the Beirut port blast, COVID, deflation of the currency, and cherry on top, a full-fledged war as we speak now. Yesterday, the World Bank actually published a report on their initial assessments saying that the war, the hostilities currently in Lebanon are costing $8.5 billion with the GDP that is around 19 billion. So half of our GDP is currently being trapped in terms of loss and damages from the war. 1 million internally displaced, 1.2 billion losses in agriculture, which was one of our main adaptation sectors, most vulnerable sector. So a context that is completely different than when we, with UNDP, with Rohini, back in 2017, drafted the proposal. We wanted to do an app. 7 years later, things have changed. Activities are not relevant anymore. Priorities have shifted. Now, Lebanese, so the government, Lebanese communities are more into humanitarian. They are in emergency response, a humanitarian. They're not in development anymore. How can you really sell adaptation? How can you plan adaptation? In addition, we have big infrastructural damage. So the baseline doesn't hold anymore. So when we had numbers, beneficiaries, climate risk, climate impacts, today they are different. Today we have a much bigger and larger pool of vulnerable people and vulnerable communities. Plus, we have security issues to reach areas. In the NAP, we had a beautiful project in a very nice coastal city where we would pilot water conservation, a local adaptation planning for water. Today, Sur, which is the city that we wanted to work in, is completely destroyed. So what do you do with that? How do you convince donors, difficult donors, I would say, to change? We cannot even reach the areas. On top of this, a government that is on the verge to collapse, employees cannot go to their institutions, let alone consult them for adaptation priorities under NAP. So what are we doing? We're not giving up. I know that we're not giving up and that we can not prioritize. So I wouldn't say we are prioritizing adaptation planning. We are integrating adaptation planning in the recovery and reconstruction plans that are currently being put on the table by the government. And we are really having a place, so I mean as UNDP, as climate change department at the ministry, we are having a place at the table with donors to negotiate the post-war. What do we need? How we are mobilizing. 2 weeks ago in France with President Macron, there was a conference to mobilize financing for Lebanon. We were there. We integrated adaptation measures in the budget, in the mobilization of funds that we needed. So we're really trying to take this multifaceted approach to integrate climate resilience in recovery plans, but also to leverage on partnerships to make sure that donors do not just fund humanitarian, but they also fund development. And by funding development, they are integrated, they are doing it in a climate-friendly way. We are climate-proofing the next generation infrastructure. We are climate-proofing plans. We are targeting vulnerable populations. And we are mobilizing climate finance and linking, actually, it's the other way around. We're linking climate finance to recovery and to displacements and refugees. Maybe 3 lessons learned from the process. Maintain flexibility and adaptive approach. Again, we do not, with the donors it's very difficult, but we have to, within the limits that we have, to be flexible and to really tailor solutions that are today relevant to what the Lebanese citizens are living. Work behind curtains. One day this will end. We will be ready. We will be ready to present something very concrete to advance the country. And maybe the last one is still engage stakeholders, tailor the conversation, tailor the communication, but they have to be on the table and they have to know that adaptation is not just emergent. I mean, it's a long-term process that has to start today. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Leah. All right. I think we have a little bit of time and we can do a second question. And noting that the NDC Pavilion is hosting us and we've been talking quite a bit about how we are aligning processes. And I think, especially in the context of how we're trying to secure financing, how we are leveraging institutions in countries, but how we are trying to align different processes that are taking place. I'm going to have one question for all our panelists. And I'm going to start in reverse order. How are you leveraging the NAP process for the enhancement of your next NDC? Starting with you, Leah.
So NAP and NDC are currently working in parallel. So the input of one will become the output of the other and the other way around. So it's really an iterative process. The good thing is that it's the same institution that is preparing both, the same implementing entities. So both are under UNDP, both are under GCF. So you have like the perfect mix recipe to avoid duplication, to create synergies, to use the consultant of the NAP to also do the agriculture NDC activities and vice versa. So really optimize on resources, integrate NAP into the NDC implementation plan, and the target of the NDC into the NAP implementation plan. So really, I mean, working in silo in this specific topic is difficult. So creating synergies, I think, is the easiest way to do both NDC and NAP.
Great. Thank you, Leah. Jyoti?
Yes, for us in Haiti, as I already said before, our NAP was prior to the NAP. So some of the key elements from the NDC was taken account on our NAP. So I can say our NAP with the NDC is like a little bit alienated, right? Because some sector or some sector that we take an account on the NDC was taken an account on our NAP. So as you know, the adaptation for our seed is very important for Haiti. So we do, and then we have to analyze the NDC with the NAP is very important for us. So it's already said that right now, to improve that, we need to also elaborate our mail for the NAP, and then to see what we do, what we have to do, and then what it's going to do, and then another way to improve the NAP implementation and under the NDC implementation. So when we will about to update the NDC, so taking account of gas and challenge, and then to make sure that we have them already in the NDC and the new NDC. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Arthur?
Yes. Again, my colleagues have said it right. There's a close linkage between the national adaptation plans and the nationally determined contributions. In Liberia, we have 6 climate-sensitive sectors that form a part of the NAP, and correspondingly, those 6 sensitive sectors are inclusive of the 9 sectors that form a part of the nationally determined contributions, the 2.0. We are currently moving towards the update of, we have started, in fact, the update processes of the NDC in Liberia. There's a stock take currently ongoing to inform the update process of NDC 3.0. So we are taking stock of what we said 5 years ago, a couple of years ago, whether we've been able to live up to what we said against targets and policy actions. Moreover, what is also important to note is that in the development of our biannual transparency report, there's a particular chapter that focuses on adaptation, as was discussed by Rohini. And we are articulating in that chapter clearly what the issues are, so that it forms a part of what comes out as the final output of the biannual transparency report. But obviously, these 2 processes must work together. That is why in Liberia we are very keen on, and one other thing I must also stress on, that we have an implementation plan that is quite significant for our NDC 2.0 particularly. And we expect to take stock of that, roll that over into 3.0. When our NAP was developed, we didn't have an implementation plan to complement our NAP. So what we are doing now is to sow support so that we can be able to get an implementation plan that complements that. What that does, by extension, is to ensure that we are able to get a mechanism that allows us to track the progress that we're going to make over time. So again, through the support of the NAP Global Network, we've finalized the implementation plan for the agricultural sector. We will be looking out for additional support to roll out a comprehensive implementation plan that takes into account the 6 climate-sensitive sectors that are articulated within the national adaptation plans. But quite frankly, the two instruments work parallelly, the national adaptation plans and the NDCs. And we are cognizant of that as a country. That is why we move with those two processes in a parallel format.
Great, thank you. Dr. Rosnak.
Yeah, thank you so much. Indeed, as I mentioned, our NAP are focused on the 6 sectors. This is water, energy, health, agriculture, forestry, and transport. Taking this into account, we were very keen to assign the NAP to and the NDC chapter on adaptation to the same UNDP partners. So that's why we're quite sure that there will be not overlapping of activities, especially that our NAP, our National Adaptation Program, was developed in base of the NDC 2.0, taking into account our ambitious targets that we have, and conditional 70% reduced, conditional 88% reduced, which is quite high. Now we're trying to get it more ambitious, and we will increase it. Not very much, but indeed, keen that we will be able to implement it. And in this way, the adaptation plan, of course, and program, and chapter will focus priority, on including implementation, reporting, monitoring, evaluation. So basically, we'll make, a cross line, a red cross line from the NAP to NDC, and we'll have linkages, a really good connection. This is really important because we have to do the activities for the sectors. It's really important to have the sectors and not to do the activities for the sake of the activities. This is really important to understand. When we do adaptation in agriculture, this is adaptation in agriculture. When we have a program on afforestation, a really ambitious program, I consider it was the most ambitious in the region. We have a program up until 2032 on forestry, and this is, increase the coverage of the forest in the Republic of Moldova with 145,000 hectares. What does it mean? That it is a costly project. Well, believe me or not, it cost up until 2032 749 million euros. For the Republic of Moldova, it's a really ambitious project. So that's why the NAP and NDC, and we have also a project on waste management and solid waste management. So basically, we're doing like a circle, and having like really pointing with the projects, with the programs, and with the implementation. And I'm happy that other countries, Liberia and Lebanon and other countries are doing the same. We're on the same track, and thank you so much for joining together and understand that we're on the right path. And ICD, thank you so much for what you're doing and joining us together. Thanks too.
Great, thank you. So we have about 9 minutes to go, and I think we can entertain 1 or 2 questions.
Thank you.
If you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yes, sure. My name is Najib Abishtid. I come from Lebanon. I'm in the Ministry of Environment. Okay. I have a question related to countries which are facing war. Liberia, maybe in 2003, maybe last time you had war, and Lebanon is still facing war. So, NAP and NDC, after war or during war, we had new emerging like challenges, and how you deal, because and also the challenges, the previous challenges, it's still working on it. So how do you, I mean, facilitate or proceed fast after war due to these challenges? So it's difficult to, because the old challenges are not yet done. How you perform with the new challenges? Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to take that question?
Yes, we had 14 years of civil conflict. Actually, started in 1989 and then rolled out up to 2003. It was a conflict internally amongst us as within the country because of differences, the issues related to marginalization. People felt disenchanted, corruption, and what have you. So that fueled up the conflict. And I quite agree with you. There are a couple of things, and in her explanation, she spoke quite passionately about what is direly required to be done, where we must be able to differentiate interventions, development interventions from humanitarian interventions. We face a similar situation. When you are in a crisis situation, most of the attention is driven towards humanitarian intervention to be able to stabilize what is currently obtaining. Beyond 2003, what we're able to do was that we're able to pick up the bits and pieces and then begin to move on towards beyond that humanitarian or war phase, now move towards the development phase. But it took us some time. It's going to be difficult because psychologically the minds of people have been distorted. Infrastructure development, even systems, the systems that should drive you towards ensuring that you get back on the trajectory will obviously take some time. We've been out of the conflict for a couple of years now, threaded now on a trajectory of ensuring that we can match up to our reporting requirements as a country. But it's going to be a difficult period. And again, your circumstance of conflict is quite different from what we went through in Liberia. So I may not have a definite answer in terms of what kind of approaches that you must be able to take out of that conflict when you come out of that conflict. Our circumstance was internal, so most likely to have been able to come out of that war-torn situation was quite much more easier, though it took some time as well for us. But we hope that our sisters and brothers in Lebanon at the soonest possible time can be able to come out of that conflict situation and be able to regain the path and trajectory on which they should tread in terms of their development agenda.
Thank you, Arthur. I think we have one last question.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to ask one question. My name is John Kana. I'm from Liberia. I serve as the NDC coordinator for Liberia. So, Minister, thank you for asking my question the other way, but I actually wanted to ask her from Lebanon in terms of now you are participating in COP and there are other events. I like the way you said it, that one day this war will stop. And what I want to know is whether you are documenting, the activity in terms of having a knowledge product at the end of the conflict so that it can be shared with other countries maybe that will be facing similar issues. As you see the question posed by the minister to Liberia to share experiences from Liberia, you see how difficult it is to actually talk about how our national processes were carried out during the course of the 14 years of civil war. Of course, Liberia continued to be a country at the time when the civil war were happening, and there were people who were working with the regime, and there were also civil society and other Liberians outside that were advocating on behalf of Liberia to participate in some major international engagement that supported the country in terms of reducing the conflict and even humanitarian support and other aid that were going to the country. So I would like to know whether you are documenting, what is happening, your intervention with respect to climate change and with respect to different programs that you have.
Thank you, John. Leah, I don't mean to put you on the spot. You have about 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Documenting, no, but that's a great idea, I think, to start building lessons learned, what's working, what's not working. But I think the main challenge is actually the reshuffling of priorities. For example, in this COP, we were expecting the Prime Minister to be here, the Minister of Environment, to have last year we had 6 ministers going to Dubai. I think this is the major challenge, how to re-put climate change in a really very busy agenda. And I think the way we're doing it, because it's not the first time we've had a lot of crises, it's just about the packaging. You can do an NDC. NDC is actually just capturing national strategies into climate change. You're not reinventing the wheel, you're not doing something new. So as long as you package it correctly, you don't even have to mention climate change as long as it increases resilience, it reduces emissions, it helps into moving, transiting, so energy transition, low carbon emission development, reducing vulnerability, it's fine with us. Call it whatever you want to call it. We'll take it and we'll use it to help Lebanon move forward and recover, hopefully.
Great. Thank you, Leah. All right. 30 seconds. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to try to summarize in a minute, all that's happened here. One of the things that's interesting for me here is that I have been involved in pretty much what is happening in national adaptation planning in every country representative that's sitting at a platform here. And I've been working with them in different capacities. But what's interesting is, especially when you add the NDC lens to everything, it's about leveraging the institutions that you have and leaning on their strengths in country to build on those. Alignment between the different processes and making sure that you keep that at the forefront. Working with key partners, strategic partners that can help you to move from strength to strength. Understanding that there's a need for flexibility and be, ready to adapt to the changes and keep moving forward. Financing is important, but should not prevent action from taking place. Avoiding duplication. Again, going back to that alignment between processes and ensuring that you're building on what exists. Having an implementation plan that can take you forward. That not only covers the big mitigation actions that are coming through every 5 years, but also what's in your adaptation planning processes. Linking those to your national development planning processes. Because oftentimes it seems if you're divorced from your national development planning processes, then you're in a silo and you may not go anywhere. Enhancing synergies. I hope that in a nutshell I've captured the primary essence of the conversations that we've had. And one of the things I would encourage partners leaving here is to continue to work with each other. I know my colleague Gertie did not mention it, but they have a different social context that they're dealing with. And they've been able to keep going by leaning on the strengths of institutions that are functional and partners that are supporting continuously. And I think some of that is coming out in some of the other dialogues that we've had. So I encourage you all to share those lessons learned, document those that can be documented, and let's keep the conversation going, and we can build on that and take the implementation forward. So when we do get to 2030 and expectations there, that we can speak to significant improvement through implementation based on the conversation and based on the actions that have been taken so far. Again, thanks everyone for being here. Thanks to our partners, Government of Liberia. Thanks to UNDP. And also thanks to the NDCP for hosting us Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.